All right, here we go. This is first episode of Who Cares About Anime. My name's Jonny Lobo, and today I have with me two of my very good friends and peers in the anime viewing and critiquing world. First one here, been a friend of mine for a few years back, and we've also done numerous podcasts together in the past. So here he is, River.
How's it going, everyone?
And also very talented and buddy from way back when. We have Paden here with us, and hopefully he's going to be joining me throughout the run of this podcast, however long that may be. So say hi to the boys and girls, Paden.
Yo Yo Hakusho.
Wow, that blows me out of the water, man. Did you?
I know, so deep.
Did you plan that before you came in here?
No, that just kind of the puns just flood from me sometimes.
Wow. All right, here we go. And if you were unable to tell right now based on the layout or the title of this episode, it's just our opinions. So it's just like the points on whose line is it anyway. That's right. Opinions don't really matter. They're just our opinions. And we just want to talk about series that we like, characters we like, maybe characters we don't like. And to that end, every episode is going to be something different. Today, we decided to start out with... we're having quite a hard time deciding, and we wanted to start out with something that we all have seen. And the wheel kind of spun around and stopped on Yu Yu Hakusho. Maybe we'll do like a reverse alphabetical order or something. Only time will tell. Anyway, and for those of you who don't know, Yu Yu Hakusho, classic shonen staple of the 90s about young spirit detective Yusuke Urameshi, and he's enlisted by the spirit world to basically keep the bad guys out of the human world. And of course, bad guys are demons and all other sorts of supernatural beings. If so, here's the part where if somehow you found yourself here and you haven't seen Yu Yu Hakusho, you have been warned. I would suggest this is where you stop listening to this and you go watch it, because it's a great watch. With that said, I think we'll just get right into it here. And first question I had here for you guys to help facilitate discussion is what served as your introduction to Yu Yu Hakusho? Like when and what were the circumstances around your first viewing? And I think I'll go ahead and start with Paden.
All right, well, I mean, I think I, like a lot of other people, got introduced to Yu Yu Hakusho via the Toonami and Adult Swim simultaneous run-on that they had going, and it took me a little while to get into it at first. I was at an age where, wasn't supposed to be watching anything on Adult Swim, but of course, that never really works, so ended up getting introduced via Toonami, saw the good version, the uncensored version on Adult Swim, and just really got hooked. I saw one episode, and it just really blew me away. The art style, if nothing else, I really appreciated it. And then the fact that they managed to make a fighting anime that had a really solid story behind it just really, really made me happy. I mean, I was a huge DBZ fan at the time. I totally ditched it for Yu Yu Hakusho, and I feel like I am a much more well-rounded person because of it, because it pretty much hooked me for about 4 or 5 years after that.
Just like Paden here, I was actually introduced to the show via late night Toonami and Adult Swim, and I remember the first time I watched it, I didn't pay attention to the name whatsoever, and the first thing I saw was the episode where it was Genkai's tournament of all things, right? And I saw the part where the guy who was supposed to be a monk of some sort turned into a demon and then shrunk Kuwabara and like broke his arms, and that was the first introduction to the show I had ever seen. Needless to say, I was a little shocked, but I was intrigued at my age. After that, I kind of completely fell out of watching the show, and I didn't even catch the name for like 4 or 5 years. I would tell my friends there's this show I used to watch that had this crazy demon hunting guy who could shoot blasts out of his fingers, and it was called Spirit Gun. And eventually, I saw it on Toonami again, watched the first episode, and I found it. It all came flooding back to me. And from there, I just have ever since been an avid fan of the show, and just it became a part of me for the longest time. It was probably my favorite show in the anime department for at least a year and a half.
I have to interject and just say that I find it amusing that everybody's first memory of like an episode of Yu Yu Hakusho is something extremely violent, like someone getting their arm broken, or mine is like the little eye dude in the Saint Beast's labyrinth getting sliced up the middle by Hiei.
I'll bet that's true for a lot of people. Yeah, it was something like that that really stuck out in your mind about Yu Yu Hakusho, and there's plenty of moments like that. I think what similar with a lot of Toonami stuff like Tenchi Muyo, I kind of had a rediscovery of sorts, and I think it was of all things Kuwabara, and just that wonderful persona that Chris Sabat brought to the table. Urameshi. I can't do it worth jack, but that was stuck in my mind for some reason. But 3 for 3. It was also back on its run in early 2000s on Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, which, by the way, if you want a surefire way to catch young people's attention, just name the block of programming Adult Swim and tell them it's the same with the pool. Like, yeah, tell kids that you can't do something. It's just going to make them want to do it all the more. So yeah, and then of course I watched it again. I believe they then incorporated more fully into the that prime time block of Toonami. I think they had to censor it a little bit there, but I remember actually for me, Yu Yu Hakusho was one I was fortunate enough to be right at the start. There was a lot of other Toonami shows like River said here, where you would catch an episode of one midway through one day on TV, and you'd go, what is this? I want to see it. I want to see the whole thing. Yu Yu Hakusho, and this goes back to Togashi's original work as well, is just they knew how to hook you. They did a really good job of it, because I remember, of course, watching the dub, and Kent Williams was the narrator provided for that. Did a fantastic job. Earlier role for him, and I remember him introducing us right at the start, and he was saying something like, he said, "This is our protagonist, Yusuke Urameshi. But the thing is, he's dead." And I was I was younger at the time, early teens. That just blew me away. I'd never heard something like that. I'm like, whoa, what? Usually when you watch something, there's always that impending peril that something bad is going to happen to the protagonist, but of course they can't ever actually die. Nothing ever that bad happens to them. All the Saturday morning cartoons that I was watching at the time, and here, that's how it starts off right off the bat, and you're like, wow, where is this going to go? Please give me more. So that was my introduction to it, and it did not disappoint throughout the whole rest of it. It just built up from there.
Well, and I feel like Kent Williams just is such an amazing voice actor. I feel like he lends an air of like credibility and like this really sweet hook to any show he is a part of. And I think without him doing the consistent narration and like the outro and intro, it really wouldn't be. I mean, it's already a great show, but it really wouldn't have had quite that sustaining power that it has. I mean, I actually, this is one of the few shows where I looked forward to the what's coming next segments.
Absolutely. Whether it's people know him from one of the things he did more recently was Space Dandy on there. He's the antagonist there, and also I think though it was sort of implied, they used the framing device of I believe it was implied it was like omniscient narrator. So you really did have this feeling, and Kent Williams has that voice of like, it's almost like the voice of God, and so I think he was also to that end well casted for things such as Deus Ex Machina in Future Diary. But anyway, let's get into basically characters and wherever you want to go with that. Some ways to guide you here. How about starting off if you have a favorite character or characters, and then going off from there. Is there least favorite characters, or anyone you didn't really like, or is there some a villain that you loved to hate? And it could be the same as a favorite character or different. What was there when you were watching it, whether then or now? Was there any character that you kind of identified with in a certain way?
Whenever it comes to characters that I could identify with, I honestly always identified with Kuwabara because realistically, I was always that guy. I was always the secondary friend in the background who kind of provided support for my other buddies, and he really reminded me of myself in his determination to be a bro, if you will. He also had some amazing character development from being just a punk to being just an ultimate epic fighter who had almost a knight's version of chivalry. And he was honestly one of the. I love how the writer made him important to the story, especially after the second season, whenever he was the only one who could cut through, what were they called? Territories?
Yes, yes.
But essentially, whenever he was the only one that could do that, I was just like, they gave him an ability that was crucial to the entire story, and he essentially, by proxy with his ability, was the key to either bringing the world's destruction via the demon world, or nobody could get through the Kakai barrier. Villain wise, I would have to say, honestly, Sensui was a villain that I loved and hated at the same time because, sure, Tagoro was brutal and dark and outright just crazy berserk level madness going on with his whole soul sucking muscle thing that he had. But Sensui was a very psychological villain. He divided his personality into 7 different parts, and each one of them contemplated with each other to make him feel better about doing what he did. And that is the definition of being absolutely insane, and their mind just completely slipping. And it doesn't even come off as pretentious as, yeah, this guy's crazy. Like, literally, you feel sympathetic for him because after what he's witnessed, they said it the best in the show, his line of black and white with morals completely turned gray because he didn't know what was good and evil anymore. And honestly, anybody in that position would realistically probably have the same idea and would probably have their whole world shattered around them. He was a very realistic villain, and that was the best part of the show to me, was their entire fight with him and how he he even knew he was terminal, and he just wanted to do what he was doing because he wanted to see it through before he died. It was just beautiful. It was phenomenally written for that entire arc. Chapter Black was just the best arc of the whole show to me, and he was the character that made it. And not to mention, he had an amazing nickname, Black Angel. Just yes. Other than that, I would honestly say Hiei was a good character because he was one of the few anti-heroes that wasn't just a misunderstood villain kind of character. He literally was not a good guy and could care less about anything but himself. And you don't really see that anymore. It's usually the kind of character like, let's say, I don't know. Name any show with an anti-hero that secretly had something bad happen to him and it turned them bad. Hiei didn't really have much of that, save for, sure, he was abandoned as a child, but that wouldn't really make him want to seek out being how he was. He was just raised to be ruthless. He was raised on the streets, if you will. He's that kind of character. He just looks after himself and nothing more.
All right. Well, as far as I'll start off kind of the way River did here with a character I relate to, oddly enough, it's not really a main character that well, I have a couple characters I relate to, but one of my relate to most, particularly when I'm in my more hyper days, I really relate to Jin, the wind demon from the Dark Tournament saga. He's just very like, he's not a bad person. He's not really a good person either. He just kind of is going with what he feels right about, and I just really something about that and like the really talking fast, hyperactive thing. It just really jived with me. I've always got a lot of flack growing up for talking too fast or this or that or the other, and well, nobody can understand you, and that's the same problem he runs through in that series, and that always just kind of in a weird way, kind of made me relate to him. And then on other days, as far as main characters, I really relate to Kurama a lot. The kind of dual nature, kind of like, you've got a lot of things you'd rather forget you had, but yet you don't want to forget you have them. You want to use them. You want to, make things work for you. As far as overall favorite characters, I really like those two. I really enjoy Hiei. I think I would agree with everything River said. I think Hiei is just the more they delve into him, the better he gets. And, fun fact, he wasn't planned to be a main character. I mean, he was written as a minor villain, and he just was interesting enough to make him a main character. And I love that. And I love that he just grew as the series went on. Honestly, as far as other favorite characters, of course, enjoy the main ragtag group of heroes, but I really enjoy Chu from the Dark Tournament, especially when he comes back later on, and he's still just a drunken boxer. He's still just a drunken mess. He doesn't get that much stronger. He gets his butt handed to him in the Demon Tournament, and I love that it's a very honest character. It's a very he is by no means a best fighter around, nor anyone that will really make any major relevance, but I think the way he is handled, I just think he is amazing. And as far as people I love to hate, I really did enjoy Bui from Team Toguro, and I thought he was really well made. Not sure how I feel about Karasu. I always am on the fence about him. I want to like him as a villain, but yet I don't. But as far as other villains that, kind of love to hate kind of thing, I really enjoyed Rando, the, shape-shifting demon monk child thing that was referenced earlier, trying to get all of Genkai's techniques. I thought he was another one that could have probably had a little more of a story arc based on him, and it would have been pretty cool. So yeah, that's my overall take on the characters, although I can't really say I can pick out one favorite character because it's just a really rich cast.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. And yeah, Chu, I believe that was also Kent Williams, and they had some fun with him and Jin and some other characters in the dub. He's just this, he's just this brawling drunkard, and they make him, you want to fight with me, Yusuke? I just giving him an Australian accent like that. I thought that
was beautiful.
Right?
That was beautiful. And then the Irish accent for Jin, I just can't. I can't even imagine not having that. Going back to watch the subs, I can't imagine not having them with a very distinct accent. It's just so well made.
I think there's some room for creative liberty there, because why would a demon have a Irish or Australian accent? Well, why would they be speaking English or Japanese or anything for that matter, right?
Exactly, and it just the accents were so over the top, but it fits so well with the motif of this series.
Yeah, man, I guess just what you guys said kind of got me going on villains. I think most, if not all, of the villains were something to be reckoned with in this series. And one for me, I remember what just really stuck with me when I first watched this series, and I was watching it on Adult Swim, was I know it's more nowadays they'd want to say it more proper, like Togaru, but the Toguro brothers. And I love saying the Toguro brothers because that sounds like some sort of old Western outlaws or bandits you got to watch out for. And just the fact he was this big Terminator-looking dude, he could just, whenever the need would arise, he could just get bigger and stronger and more powerful, and just the way he'd be largely remorseless all throughout everything he did. He was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Also, I believe River brought up Shinobu. Just when you get through the first, you get through the there's Rando, of course, but when you get through the Dark Tournament, and you just think wow, where do you go from there? And then you get this villain Shinobu who terrifies you in a whole different way. And I just really stuck out with me was his backstory, and very much he couldn't really cope with the gray world we all live in. He was very much black and white. There's right and wrong, yes and no, and nothing in between. he was very much that way as well, in terms of he started out something Yusuke could relate to. He should have been like a mentor figure to Yusuke, starting out as a spirit detective, a prodigy, but unfortunately going down a different path there. And I just remember, I couldn't say for certain that they were intentionally going for this, but I remember when they were coming into his lair after defeating the rest of, what do they call them, the Sensui Seven, the other psychics, that were working for him. And he's watching the television, not even paying attention to them as they're coming in, and he's kind of doing this, this monologue of a madman, if you will, and he's watching this, it looks like a war movie, and it kind of, to me, looked kind of like a Vietnam era, probably going for like an American looking movie on there. And it kind of reminded me something of like Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now, where their journey, they finally made it to the boss's lair, and that's where, just in case there was any room for doubt in your mind up until that point, it's kind of revealed like, oh yeah, you are insane. Much like you guys have said, I really enjoyed about all of the characters in some way. Hiei's a badass. Kurama's a badass. I mean, like, I love Kurama. He's probably my favorite character. I really identified, which is rare for me, I'm finding out, but I really, a lot of ways, identified with Yusuke. I loved his relationship with Genkai. The student and mentor relationship they had, and almost the fact, I really like the fact that it was Genkai, and she was a woman being a mentor to a young man. You don't see that nearly as often as the Karate Kid dynamic of the old master and the younger apprentice, and it's usually a male mentor figure. But so Genkai kind of filled in the role of his absent mother in that way, a lot of times. And that really stuck with me when, Yusuke, he's very much like we all are when we're young, and you're kind of just energetic and going in every direction. And Genkai tells him at one point, concentrate on what's important and then stick to that. Commit to it all the way. And that stuck with me. And Genkai, absolutely one of my favorite characters in anime in general, really. And boy, when Toguro had that meetup with her, that was those were some feels there.
All aboard the feels train.
And speaking of characters, lest we forget, how about what is surely to be many people's favorite incarnation of the Grim Reaper, who was anything but grim, Botan? What do you guys think?
Well, honestly, like, the first time I watched this series, when they started off with the Grim Reaper, I kind of had Yusuke's like reaction to it of like, seriously, you're the Grim Reaper, and I was like almost let down when I first saw it. But then, as young teenage boys sitting there, oh, I don't want a happy, bubbly, blue-haired girl to be my Grim Reaper. But as I watched the series, I really felt bad about even ever thinking that, because she is such a rich character. I mean, yeah, she's bubbly, she's goofy, all these things, but she's got so much emotional depth to her. And she is so there for all the characters when they need her, even though she may not be, she's never the strongest. She's never the smartest or the swiftest or anything like that. But she is just always there when the chips are down.
She very much is like the character that cheers everyone up whenever they're out of the trough, even though she has her moments whenever she gets really down. And I think the Dark Tournaments had the best representation of this, whenever she would play around, do her cat impersonation, and then whenever she felt Genkai's energy leave, spoiler for viewers who haven't seen it, who decided not to leave at the beginning, she played it off as she was fine, but then she went to the bathroom, turned on the sink, pulled a Tenchi Forever, and basically cried her eyes out. That was real. And I mentioned it earlier, but that was real emotion. That was heart-wrenching to see such a positive and bubbly character fall internally like that, and to get so down. And she just, for being a secondary character, she was absolutely phenomenal. And like, really, the show wouldn't have quite have been the same without her. I mean, that you could say that for all the characters, but Botan in particular was just She kind of kept everything lively. Like whenever I hear the opening to the show, the Smile Bomb song, the first thing I think of is Botan riding on that oar that she has.
Oh, definitely. And then, like, how many people, I mean, maybe this is just me, but I have heard so many people with the ringtone of bingo, bingo, you win the prize.
Gosh, she was fun. Like you guys said, bubbly, but she was very much part of the team throughout the whole thing. And even though, she could have had this very detached view of things, if she's, quintessentially the Grim Reaper and deals with spirit world matters and escorting people on the river Styx and death all the time, you would think she might be really jaded to it or not really care all that much about Yusuke's plight or journey, but she really does. And she was another example of kind of a maternal figure for Yusuke earlier on. And that's something I really like with Yu Yu Hakusho. He's a young man and growing into a young man anyway, but his interest has been Keiko for the entire thing. And sorry, Keiko, we didn't bring you up a whole lot, but there's a whole slew of characters that we just didn't have time for. But she was his love interest, even when he was still at that age of what? No, girls, whatever. But he surrounded. It's not blatantly obvious, but Yusuke is surrounded by female figures, a lot of times older, and it's very much a way to fill that void that unfortunately he didn't really have a father figure, which is kind of why he latches on to Ryzen the way he does, in kind of a weird way, and a mother that was also very distant and not very responsible and didn't really, raise him all that lovingly. So, Botan was yet another substitute for that, and or even kind of like a big sister to Yusuke, and kind of chiding him or scolding him at certain points along the way. And so she was fun, and she just gave a lot of spirit to the show. Alrighty, let's get down to the nitty gritty. And of course, everything is in your opinion, obviously, and we're referring just to the anime here. As people may or may not know, there's a couple OVAs, 2 feature-length. Well, the Golden Seal may not be, but anyway, there's 2 movies as well, and of course, there's the original manga, which anime slightly deviates from towards the end there, but they end at basically the same place. So anyway, anime specifically, what do you think were some of its strengths and weaknesses, if it had any weaknesses, and just things like that? Your opinion of what worked really well. Is there anything you would have done differently? Things like that. And we'll start with Paden.
All right. Well, I guess as far as things that went well, like that's a pretty never-ending list for this show. I thought the animation style in general was absolutely gorgeous. The storylines overall were really, really solid. I'll touch on that on the overall part here in a minute, but I thought the Dark Tournament series was probably one of the best like fighting anime setups I have ever seen. Puts DBZ and a lot of those to shame. I'd say the biggest strength of this series was in its characters and in its character development, because despite the fact that a lot of the series is spent fighting, even during those fights, they are developing each character, even when there's not, necessarily storyline progression. There is an intense amount of character development that you just don't see out of a lot of series in general, let alone out of a lot of modern anime or out of a lot of fighting anime. It managed to really be over the top without being quite G Gundam level, which I could appreciate. And it really gave a different way to look at a fighting anime. I mean, how often do you get someone that's like, worried about ghosts and spirits and demons rather than, one gang against another or one martial arts master against another? It doesn't really happen that often. Like usually you either have one genre or the other. And I thought that was a really beautiful blending in this series of those two. And also the whole rating system that they have of, you could be a B class demon or an S class demon or this or that or the other. And same with humans. I thought that was a really interesting way of like pooling people together so you knew kind of where they sat without actually saying this person is stronger than X person. As far as some overall weaknesses of the series, I do feel that near the end they started kind of losing it a little bit. They basically just said, "All right, we need something to wrap up the series. Let's make it another Dark Tournament spinoff." And while that is fine, I feel there were a lot of other things they could have done that would have wrapped it up a little neater, that wouldn't have been quite so anticlimactic, as it were, especially since all the characters we've been introduced to so far, all these characters that have trained their hardest to, get through this tournament, blah, 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 none of them ends up winning it. It's just some character we meet for a few episodes before that. And granted, I know it's supposed to be the point of, oh, they're still big bads, bigger than the big bads we already know. Yeah, we get that, but it really felt kind of like a cheap ending to what was already a beautiful anime, and it just really kind of diminished the impact of some of the characters. Also, I've watched the last episode multiple times, and I am mixed on my feelings about that. I feel like it was a very strong ending. I'm glad they kind of brought the Yusuke Keiko romance to a close officially, like set it up for that, what it was. Great. I thought it was really well done. I really loved the twist of Hiei falling for someone and staying, which is not something we had seen from him. That kind of loyalty, that kind of show of devotion. I thought that was really strong. But on the flip side, I felt like a lot of things that were done were kind of ways in order to make everyone have a happy ending rather than actually deal with it the way the characters would have done it. So overall assessment, really strong series, really strong characters. Not so great of a final season, especially after Chapter Black, but overall, definitely would recommend it anyone that wants to see it.
Well, I'm gonna have to agree with Paden here on every single point, because what Yu Yu Hakusho did right was its character development. Because sure, you had other fighting anime, you had DBZ, which I'm not too big a fan of. You had stuff like that, but Yu Yu Hakusho, it had mystery to it. It had lore to the way the demon world and everything worked that was actually easily accessible, and not just it wasn't used as a point to fight with. It was used as an actual background setup. The emotion, oh my god, the emotion in the show was real, and I got choked up a few times. Like whenever Kuwabara faked his death at the end of the Dark Tournament, whenever Tagoro missed his vitals with that hit, I was legit distressed about that, because the show knew how to grip me with amazing characters and amazing writing for those characters. Or whenever Kurama had to make a decision to defeat that one kid who was one of Sensui's 7 psychics. Kurama did not like to do that, and then the elder Tagoro brother just rubbed salt in the wound, and eventually that led to his demise with the Sinning Tree, which was probably one of the most brutal finishers to a villain I've ever seen in an anime thus far. Whenever it comes to what should have changed, the last season, or the Three Kings arc, was probably it was rushed, in my opinion. They could have done so much more with it. Like whenever they had all the tournaments, they would have like 5 fights at a time. It was basically the Dark Tournament Part 2. It would have been cool if, say, they gave it like an extra 30 episodes, right? But at the same time, it would have been amazing if they had made it to where Yusuke has to travel to each of the places individually, right? And he has to fight them or get them to join him. But in the end, we got them voting who becomes the next Demon King after Ryzen died. And it was a little lackluster, but I do like that they handled it in the way that he doesn't win. That was very interesting, and it kind of showed, even though as far as Yusuke had come and how strong as he got, he could still have been beaten and still had a lot to learn. And it was a very good, almost life lesson to teach that no matter how good you are, there's always room for improvement, and to never stop at what you're doing. Otherwise, you may be swept under the tide of the newcomers. And that goes for pretty much everything in life, and that's what it showed me. And then they could have brought in a lot more with, hell, they could have given Hiei a lot more development. They could have given him at least 5 episodes for his entire arc with Makora, or whatever the lord's name was, one of the lords of the demon world.
Makoro.
And yeah, and that would have made more sense for him to have stayed down there for her. Like, whenever he stayed in Demon World, I kind of saw that happening. He didn't like staying in the mortal world very much, but he did it for a reason that felt kind of alien to his character. If we had seen more development and maybe a romance sort of budding a little bit more blatantly, like, I'm all about subtlety, but if it was blatant, or a little bit more blatant at least, I would have been okay with him staying down there for his reasons. But in the end, we got what we got, and it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Oh no, it was still really good, and that last episode has one of my favorite endings of anime history. But as a whole, the if I was to rate the seasons, the first 3 would get a 9, and the final part would get a 7. It was good, but it didn't hold a candle to what they had done before, and it's very hard to. Like, whenever you get done with the Dark Tournament Chapter Black, it's really hard to live up to what you have built up to, because you can't really get any higher than what they just did in those seasons. But that's just my personal opinion. If they had stretched out the last season, maybe have done a little bit more with the plot development, maybe not had made it a tournament, it could have been a good last season. It would have held up to Chapter Black, in my opinion, but I don't think it could have surpassed it by any means. I think by that time we were just pretty much at a point where we had reached the apex of how good Yu Yu Hakusho was going to be.
All right, those are all very good points, and I have heard that somewhat frequently, because I think it is a very valid point about, especially after those first 2 arcs, like you said, the Three Kings arc in the anime felt a little rushed there, particularly the tournament, which again they did a tournament again. Okay. But yeah, very good takeaway, like you said, and what a twist where, unlike Dragon Ball Z, which I'll try to redeem our cast for listeners out there. I loved Dragon Ball Z back in the day, but unlike Dragon Ball Z here, hey, our main character didn't win, and he's that happens in life, and you have to be okay with it yourself, and be able to move on, get better. But ultimately that happens in life. And again, I think, as mentioned, though it was rushed, the ending was pretty much as the manga intended, and some plot points later on of the manga that were not in the anime were somewhat, it seemed like they were somewhat reused to me in the films, particularly the kidnapping Quenma aspect of the Golden Seal, and the the world is doomed element of fight for the Netherworld, which also, by the way, I think one of the movies, I think the Golden Seal, as of right now, has only been dubbed by Funimation, and so has the cast that we're familiar with. But both of them, they were dubbed in English before the Funimation version of the series that most listeners out here are probably familiar with. So I've seen some people comment like, oh, when they find the films, because a lot of times people are more familiar with the series than the movies. They'll find them on the internet and go, oh, what, they didn't get the original cast back. How could they do that? Why didn't they? Well, hold on a minute. Look at when it was made, and look at who made it. Yeah, I really liked it. It went into the Three Kings arcs. We got to see more into the backstory of characters like Kurama and Hiei, who were very enigmatic up to that point, and still very much are. Being, demons, they're going to have an interesting backstory, at least compared to Yusuke and Kuwabara. No offense, guys, but I didn't particularly like, though I did like throughout it, like S-class demons and stuff. Those are just kind of a cool ranking. But I didn't really like the they were getting too DBZ power levels, and they basically had like scouter type devices that could measure them, and I didn't care for that. The series didn't need that. It was well established up to that point with the preceding arcs. It didn't need that. You would just know, oh, this guy's a badass, he's strong, or this guy's trained harder than me, or that Shinobu, he's a spirit detective, but he's older than me, so he basically knows everything I do, but he's had more experience. So yeah, other than that, it is as you guys said, and we probably wouldn't be singing its praises even today as much as we are right now if it wasn't worth hollering about. And it is. It's a great watch, and I would say for any generation, because it's that. I see sometimes with other peers of mine watching stuff, especially kind of at our age, where shonen has kind of lost its luster a bit, or they've seen too many, or they've kind of outgrown it, and that's fine, that's normal. That's what seinen's for. but no matter what age you are, I think there's a joy in seeing something, even if it is done to a T, just executed perfectly. And I think Yu Yu Hakusho basically is that, with maybe a few of the critical exceptions that we brought up here. But hey, what doesn't have that? But yeah, it's classic shonen to a T, and just executed phenomenally. And its legacy, it went on to, of course, series creator Yoshihiro Togashi went on. He did Hunter x Hunter, or Hunter x Hunter. Whatever, Japanese with X's are weird like that. A lot of times it could be Hunter Cross Hunter, I don't know. But and then also went on to very much inspire the likes of the shonen for the next generations, if you will, Bleach and Naruto. I believe the creator of Naruto, his name escapes me right now, but he has directly named Togashi as inspiration for his work in Yu Yu Hakusho in particular. So it very much like its sibling, if you will, Dragon Ball Z of that era, and paving the way for shonen anime everywhere in Japan and the world. It definitely has some lasting legacies. So I guess now we can just open it up the floor to general discussion.
I guess one thing I'm interested in, because we've all made the DBZ comparison, which the 90s era, you kind of like, you can't do shonen anime without referencing DBZ. It's just one of those things. But I found that Yu Yu Hakusho had both some great parallels to it and some great ways that it spun off from that vein of Dragon Ball Z, which, let me also, as Jonny Lobo mentioned a few minutes ago, yeah, I'm also totally on board. I loved Dragon Ball Z growing up and everything like that. As much as I may, compare it and kind of knock it, I still do love it. And I'm just interested to kind of hear what you two as well think on some of the ways that you kept going with that vein, and also the way it just really made itself unique.
I think something that strikes me here, and just thinking about what I loved about particularly my televised viewing experience of Dragon Ball Z, which I'm sorry, that's a thing of the past with anime nowadays, because you can, and I do it too, absolutely, you can go on your streaming sites or the internet and just binge on a series, watch the whole thing. But I remember when watching Dragon Ball Z, the build-up to the villain that you had, stretched out over an arc, the build-up to the fight with Frieza, it is agonizing sometimes, but it was also terrifying. You're like, oh, no way, they're gonna fight this guy, no way. And so that build-up, the longer you gotta wait for that, it builds them up in your mind as a spectator, and it makes them just that much more intimidating. And I think Yu Yu Hakusho a lot of times did a great job with that. Like Rando, he was a cool villain, but not a lot of build up to him. But he wasn't, though he was an arc, I think, in the manga and arguably in the anime, he wasn't quite, to me, like for example, I said younger Toguro. Just the build up they had to this guy, to where you would see him take somebody out, or you would see them in the tournament take out their opponents without breaking a sweat. Or when you found out that, that time, remember when we had that moment in with Yusuke and Kuwabara where we bonded and we defeated the bad guys to grow. Yeah, that was staged. That was nothing. So I think that was something that Yu Yu Hakusho, I think, definitely was its own in that way. But that was, if we're looking at comparisons, that's something I definitely got from that. And I think you don't quite see as much of that anymore. A lot of Dragon Ball Z, and granted, on television at that time, it'd be in the realm of filler, what they would call it, but I don't particularly like using that because people are ambiguous or not sure what that means, and also implying that, it has no purpose. Well, sometimes it does in terms of makes you wait. You gotta wait, and not like a lot of times it is put in there because they just gotta stretch stuff out or for other purposes like that. But a lot of times there's build up for a reason. And Yu Yu Hakusho, though I wouldn't say it really had a lot of filler, I don't think. I think it was very streamlined in that way, but it did have build up and to very effective ends.
Honestly, with any parallel to DBZ at the time, I would honestly say that it's the whole vertical progression idea. Everybody gets stronger over the course of the show. Like, I mean, a lot of shows do that as a form of character arc and outer development, but DBZ and Yu Yu Hakusho both had one thing in common, and that was they see their opponent. The audience freaks out and wonders how they're going to fight them. They train and get themselves ready to fight them, and then they build it up, and then the fight happens and fireworks go everywhere. Yu Yu Hakusho fit that to a T, but it also managed to throw in a lot of emotion in there, whereas DBZ, a good analogy would be DBZ is like watching a fireworks show on YouTube. Yu Yu Hakusho's fight scenes were like being there at the show. And it's the way that I always saw it. Like, I got more involved with the fights to Yu Yu Hakusho because the stakes felt more realistic. They felt more... I thought I was going to see something that would distress me and that would just ruin everything for the characters. I was afraid to see them die and lose, which that doesn't happen a lot. And even shows today, like the only other show that I could think of that happening was Razafon. Stuff like that. And also I could say that you can make a parallel to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure a little bit because it had gotten pretty big at that time. But the only parallel I can make to that is the over-the-topness, just the Fist of the North Star. Everybody has amazing abilities. They just get better and better with them as it goes on. It's just that Yu Yu Hakusho didn't have overly buff guys that were... Because JoJo, I love it to death. It's probably my second favorite shonen show. But everybody in there looks like Broly. And Yu Yu Hakusho didn't do that. It was down to earth, but it was still over the top at the same time. And I just appreciated what it tried to do and tried to be something different, all the while kind of nodding to different shows that were big at the time.
I totally agree with you there. And just thinking of the way they kind of distinguish themselves, I also appreciated the fact that, with shows like DBZ or some of these other fighting anime, you get a lot of like fight scenes that have similar moves of like punch, 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 block, 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 and like long scenes of, breaking mountains in half and, slamming into things that like are the same moves that are going to show up in every major fight. And sometimes with a boss, sometimes just in training or whatever. It's going to be in almost every fight. And I think one of the things I appreciated about Yu Yu Hakusho was that each fight was very unique. It was as unique as the characters themselves, because there was never just okay, Yusuke's in the battle, it's going to be spirit gun, spirit gun, spirit gun, hit him against the wall type of thing. No, it was every enemy is looked at differently and every strategy is different. And I thought that was something that, even at the time, I was appreciating the fact that no other shonen really takes that amount of time to make the person's whole style different based on their opponent. And in real life, that anyone who has ever been in any form of martial arts or in, just regular fights, street fights, you do not just, pull out the same set of tricks every time. You watch your opponent. And I thought that was something that was just really artistically captured and just really wonderfully embraced in this series.
No wonder you like Kurama. That's very much his fighting style. So he's got to wait and watch his opponent before he makes his move.
Oh yeah, I mean, you get that, and I mean, one of my other favorites of the time was kind of the same way, was the Kenshin from Rurouni Kenshin. Just that whole like wait, watch, and then move. And most successful combatants will tell you that is half the battle is knowing your opponent. You got to know yourself. Yes, that you'll lose every battle if you don't. But if you don't know your opponent, or if you don't take the time to know them, you're gonna get hurt.
I think we'll be touching on that one sometime in the future, and can also bring up some great kind of anime for, shonen for the next generation, and all about applying your different facets of your teachings and applying things eclectically to overcome your obstacle, whatever that may be. And that's what a lot of shonen fighting anime is really all about. And Yu Yu Hakusho certainly is no exception there. I was also really impressed with, right off the bat, kind of the climax of the Dark Tournament arc was very much, Yusuke, you got to get strong enough. You got to get strong enough to take on this Toguro. You know, he's a mountain of a demon, and he did, and he rose to the challenge and put his body through all that duress, and with Genkai teaching him. But then it's a big change at the start of the next arc, the chapter Black, and you have these psychics involved, and Genkai employs the trio of psychics. I don't have. I'm sorry, boys. I can't remember your names. It's been a little while. But she employs them too as sort of a test for Yusuke and the rest of the crew, in terms of there's going to be times when, sorry DBZ, but just getting stronger, getting bigger, punching harder is not good enough, or it's just not the right solution to the problem. I mean, you had guys where his territory, his psychic power was, with his shadow, he could once you were caught, you were completely immobile and there's no way you could move. So it doesn't matter how strong you are there. Same with the other one, who Kurama ended up defeating in a battle of wits. Good thing they had Kurama on their team for that. He lost pretty quickly, and his rule was, in his territory, can't do anything violent, and you just can't. Doesn't matter how strong you are. Those are the rules. So I really loved that it was very, very, again, the parallel to DBZ, sure, or a number of fighting anime, shonen anime, what have you, that a lot of Yu Yu Hakusho is about commitment and training yourself and getting stronger. But Togashi knew that there's more to life than that, and sort of as a young viewer, when you're watching or reading and you get past that, now it's time, just like Genkai did, it's time for the next level, it's time for the next lesson. Sometimes you got to use your brain.
Yeah, and it's kind of comes down to that whole, like, I've heard the comparison before of there's a difference between being a fighter and being a warrior, and I feel like, the characters in DBZs, they're referred to as fighters, the Z fighters, all this stuff, and that's very fitting. I mean, they're very strong, they're good at fighting, all that. But the difference between that and a warrior is just as much mental. It is knowing war, it is knowing the art of combat, and there's more of that in Yu Yu Hakusho than I have seen in, frankly, most anime since then. It is very much each character has to get better, and they don't usually do it through just fighting training. They don't go into a gravity cell and train at 100 times Earth's gravity. No, they go and they figure out what it is that they're good at, which, honestly, that if that isn't like a PSA, I don't know what is. Go out and find what you're good at, find what you're passionate about, and just do it. Get better at it. You may never be the best. There's always going to be someone better, but you can find ways that you can be the best you can possibly be. Even if that's, ending of the series, Kuwabara stopping being a fighter and becoming a student and becoming actually smart and respecting himself. Like, that is huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of fun life lessons in there, and you'll find that with a lot of good anime out there. So I guess we're probably getting to about that time, gentlemen, but are there any other comments or any other areas of discussion or any closing remarks?
I have a good Kuwabara impression.
Do you?
All right, we got to hear this.
You're Messi.
That was pretty good, man.
It's that one in my Janai from El Hazard, which I will do if we do an El Hazard cast. So the viewers, be ready.
Oh, as soon as I get through some of the other OVAs and stuff, I definitely want to be on that train. So yeah.
Well, that's reason enough to continue with this and to listen into future ones, if you ask me. So I think that'll be it. If you listeners out there liked what you heard, you're welcome. I'm kidding. We're just going to be carrying on like this, going to be having fun, and we're going to probably switch out the seats as we go, and new episodes will be up when we get around to them. We got a lot of other stuff that we're involved in, and a lot of it anime related. If you'd like to check out some of that, we're going to put links in the description. And if you care about anime, or at least care about some dudes on the internet talking about anime, feel free to subscribe to us here on YouTube as well. All right, thanks for joining us, listeners. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time, and we'll catch you next time.